So you may have your 501c3 or you're working on getting your 501c3. So whatever stage you're at right now, we really need to figure out how do we pull it all together. There are so many moving parts when it comes to launching and building your nonprofit. You have your organization, and your organization sometimes we get it mixed up with our programs or our projects. So one of the things we need to get clarity on, and that I was able to get clarity on, and this is what helped me build my nonprofit, was getting clear on what my organization was, the difference between my programs and my project. So the programs, I can have services which fall under the organization. So those could be like my counseling, mentoring, things along that line. Housing program, then you have your projects, and those projects are short term projects. So you really have to be able to differentiate between your long term programs and your short term projects. Your projects may be to restore a house. You may find a house and you want to restore, or maybe just cleaning up the neighborhood, or doing a food drive that you know is not going to be a program over a long period of time. So, really being able to clarify and differentiate those two is really going to make a difference in helping you to be able to launch and build your nonprofit organization and to get sustainability, because that's what we want, is we want to get sustainability. Sometimes many times, and now when we first started a nonprofit, we started because we have in our hearts like, this is my purpose, this is my passion, and you know what it is, but we have not really done a needs assessment. It's like, just because we believe it's what it is doesn't mean it is. And then if we build it, we think if we build it, it will come. If we build it, the people that I want to serve, they're going to come and they're going to flock to my services because I know it's a need. But have you clearly gone out and done your need assessments? And that's one of the first things we really need to do. You have an idea what it is that you want to do, right? You have an idea. You say, I want to start this nonprofit organization, and this is what I want to do. But you have to be able to clarify the needs, okay? It's like, what is needed in the community? Even though I say I want to provide services, and I'm going to use myself as an example, because I realized that after I had started my nonprofit organization, I had came up with what my programs were going to be, but I didn't do my need assessment because I assumed that there was a need, okay? Because I myself had been in that situation. So I was like, okay, there must be services. There's got to be services. We know there's teen pregnancy all over. So we know that there has to be services. So I got my 501c3, okay? I set up my program, and I went out to the community to start talking about my services. But what I realized, and you probably will be like, what? When I tell you this, you're going to be like, what? I realized I built my services, but after I've done my need assessment, there was no need for my services. Okay? There wasn't a need, and there wasn't a want. Okay? There wasn't a want. And you're like, why wasn't there a need and why wasn't there a want? Well, there were still teen mothers back in the day, still today, but back in the time when I started my nonprofit in 1987, the need, as I was building it, what I found was within that time, they had started closing down all of the homes where they would take teen parents in, and they would be like, you be at school with your partner, and they'll be like, well, hey, where's such and such go? Oh, she went to go visit her aunt, right? So they go and they visit their aunt, and then they come back home after the summer or after their whatever break they had. They come home, and nobody knew the wiser. But what happened was they were sent away to a home, a cottage, and they would stay there. They would they would deliver their babies. The babies would go to adoption, and the child would go back home. And you would never know that the young lady was pregnant. But after I started my nonprofit, started to grow it, they started shutting them down. And so once they shut them down, the federal government and the states like, okay, we still need to put services for teen mothers, right? So what they did was they put money into the community, but they allocated it to different programs. And so all of the kids at that time, they had to go to that program. They couldn't go to anywhere they wanted to go. They had to go to that program if they wanted to keep their aid for dependent children, their welfare. So I was like, there was no need for my service. They couldn't come to my program because it was exactly what they had already been funding it. And it was locked up. It's like nobody was locked up. You're not getting in, especially a new person coming on the scene. Unless I had something that was so innovative, they weren't getting in. So what I had to do was I had to get out into the community and do a need assessment. Have you done your need assessment? Okay. And that's going to have to take some time to go out and talk about who you are. Not talking about who you are, but what's available in the community and what's needed, because you're going to need to fill that gap. because a lot of the communities are all sewn up with what they're doing, but there's gaps. There's gaps, right? And you need to figure out how you can fill these gaps to make sure you're meeting the needs that people what they need and what they want. This is again what we talk about because just because they need it doesn't necessarily mean they want it, right? Okay. So those are the things that you really need to talk about. It's because they need it. It's like, do I want it? Because if they don't want it, people make choices. I'm not going, right? I don't want this service. So once you can really get out there and clarify the needs, then you have to think about, okay, now what is my mission, my purpose for myself personally? That's one thing we never talk about is ourselves personally. But we really have to have our own personal mission because otherwise we'll be ebbing and flowing, right? Then we have to figure out what was our mission for our nonprofit. Okay. Why did I start this organization? Who did I want to serve? So I realized that my passion was for teens. So I didn't change what I wanted to do. I just changed the services after I found the gap. And so what I found is I went out to the community, and it wasn't an overnight thing. I found that what was missing was drug and alcohol counseling for teen services. And so I was able to match those two together because I was a counselor at the services, I was able to match them together. And so then once I was able to find out what the need was, I said, okay, now let me go back. And after I found out what the gaps were, and I was a lot of homework within there because you have to do planning and you have to do your homework in there, researching. Today it's a lot easier to research than when I was able to research. And I constantly use this research now when I'm creating new programs and projects for the organization I started. And so what you need to do is you need to see what other services, what are some of the best practices, what are evidence-based practices, what has been successful, and you're going to have to look and find out what that is and be very innovative. Incorporate it into your program. Okay, and so after you've drawn all that together and you've figured out the five W's and the two H's, okay, the five W's and the two H's, and you created your program, even just the semblance of your program using the five H's and the two W's, then you want to get out there and then you're going to start networking. Okay. You want to be able to network to show people to network because this is going to be a lot where your money is. It's going to be in the networking. Okay. We think that we can, we could just write a grant and we're going to get that money. But a lot of the grants, you're going to have to do some networking because if you're going to be successful, you cannot work your program in a silo. Okay? There's no way. You have to be able to work with your community because remember, a nonprofit organization is a community-based organization. It's based in the community for the community, right? And so that's what we want to make sure we do. It's a public organization. So it's like we have to get it out in the public, but you have to work together. Okay. And so networking is an act is a knack within itself. Networking, finding out who you should network with, how you should network with them, and how who you're networking with is in line with who you are as a person, and then who your organization is, right? So you really have to. It's really a fine line to make sure you're getting the best partners, because these best partners you're going to have and learn how to do that effectively is going to help you when you're starting to get the funders. Okay, when you start writing those grants, when you start getting those funders, when you start asking for sponsorship, because your net people that you network with is going to be key. Okay, so what I want to do, okay, so that's pretty good, huh? So there's a lot. So not only those two, there's a lot of information that's going to tell you what you need to do. What I want to do is tell you how and why you need to do it, how to do it and why you need to do it. It's really important the why behind it because when you're out there and people ask you, well, why, you'll be like, because they said I needed to do it. No, you know why, because you're clear. You're going to get a lot of clarity on this. And this is what's going to help you launch your organization, make it successful, and keep sustaining it. You when you're out there networking, you're going to find a lot about funders. You're going to find a lot about fundraising. There's so much you're going to find out, and you're going to find some dynamite partners that you would not even think that would come along and be your partner. Okay, so those are some of the things that you really need to focus on. What niche are you feeling? Not just following your passion. All right. So I hope that was helpful, and I hope to see you soon. Much success with your nonprofit.